Yeah. So let me introduce you to the entire audience and then all the stage is yours. So he has joined us for the first time here, but let me give you a brief background about him. He's an experienced meditator with an accessible blend of humor and very down to earth spiritual wisdom. I'm sure you'll experience that through his talk. He also has a few hobbies, like he's a keen organic gardener and loves all types of sport. And just to let you know, he's a retired community dentist and also is presently a trustee of the Janki Foundation, which we have for spirituality in healthcare from UK, London, UK. And currently, as we speak, he's based in Leeds in UK, North England, and he helps to coordinate the activities there. And he's working with the Brahma Kumaris for now over 40 years, which is a pretty long time. And let me just, as always, speak a little bit in the form of a poem for him, and then a little bit of poem on regard. So we have with us Dr. David Goodman, who is indeed a gentleman, of whom we all from the Values Workshop team are a very big fan. In more than 40 years of his spiritual journey, if we span, he's got this unique opportunity to be able to scan and get souls out of the internal heat with a spiritual fan. Otherwise, they have just behind materialism ran and ran, and finally now realize that with meditation, we will and we can. So particularly, we will be able to regard ourselves and give regard to others. So a few lines on regard. So today he shall enlighten us on how to have regard for one another, look at each other as souls and meet each other as a brother. Let's sustain our racing and crying mind, pacifying it like a mother, so that amidst crisis and chaos, it doesn't anymore have to bother. Let us be the mother of our mind. It doesn't bother you. And now on my spiritual journey, I have indeed come a long way farther or further, that small petty things of me and mine don't disturb me rather. So with this, I would give it to Brother David. Thank you so much for joining. And he's one of our very rare speakers who has joined right from the beginning. You were there, you were seeing what we were doing. So all yours, over to you. Thank you. You have to, sorry, you have to unmute. I don't know it again. Yeah.
Is that better? Can you hear now? Yeah. Can you hear? Yeah.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for the invite. I must admit, when I'd seen all the list of people you had, I thought, oh my goodness. And I must give a big thanks to the team. I'd been seeing the emails from time to time. I hadn't realized you've been keeping this going for 2 years or something like that. I think that's I think that's amazing. I must say, I put my in England we say take my hat off to you, because I thought, gosh, that is absolutely amazing how you've kept going with all the virtues and the values. So and I must admit, I did listen to Maureen's talk, actually, because I was interested. I mean, when you asked me, would I do something, I always say, okay, I'll say yes. I've learned not to say no, because it's always an opportunity to do something, even if it's a bit challenging. I'm sure we all can equate with that, when we have to have a bit of courage to do something where we don't always feel 100% confident. In the early days when I was younger, give me a football or a cricket bat or wicket-keeping gloves, in my case, tennis racket, table tennis, I was pretty confident. I was quite good at a lot of sports, which I enjoyed. But the whole thing of speaking and sharing was absolutely foreign to me. Shouting out orders on the football pitch as captain of the team was easy, but actually talking it's always taken me a while to get my head around these things. But I must admit, you can't see my desk, I'm pleased to say, but I'm surrounded by prompt cards because ever since you asked me to talk about regard, I've been thinking about it a lot more. Actually, I was very happy and relieved when you said regard, because I thought, yes, that's something that it immediately resonates with me, because it's something which it just feels so important. But to be honest, I am going to share a few things, but the majority of the things that I was thinking would be have already been shared. They've come up in the conversations. Maureen's talk last week, which you've highlighted, was very, very comprehensive. But in my mind, it's always a question, well, how can I practice these things? And because, as you do when you're supposed to share a few things, you think, well, I better really practice it this week. And we're in a Brahma Kumari's meditation center here. There's 5 of us, and this thing of individuality is so important, because we're so, I mean, I think it was Shakespeare, wasn't it? The world is but a stage, and we are all actors on the stage. And of course, in the Brahma Kumaris, we have this idea that the whole world is like a drama, and we're actors, and each one of us is unique. And actually, I was making notes as talking. This has come up a lot, hasn't it? To really, really accept that we are completely different. Yes, we're spiritual beings. When Kumaris, we use the term souls, and we've got all the innate values and virtues, but how we think, how we decide, how we function, we are very, very, very different. And I know Sister Maureen, my better half, Sister Maureen Goodman, when we first came, we were very young, and I remember it felt as if Sister Maureen was sort of, going on a trajectory like this, and I wasn't. I was, going a bit slower. And I was driving Daddy Janki at that time, and Daddy Janki passed away recently, but she was based in the UK for many years and was the head of the Brahma Kumaris. And I was sort of talking to her, and she said something which, this must have been over 40 years ago. She said, David, never, ever compare yourself with anyone. And I've really thought about that a lot since that time, because ultimately, with all these spiritual ideas, I mean, I'm just listening to, what's been shared. I mean, I felt like overwhelmed by such beautiful points. But ultimately, the final common denominator is can I take one of these aspects and really embed it in myself, so that it really becomes part of me. So yeah, I mean, where to start? I think you've mentioned cleaners, and just going back to sort of regard and respect. To be honest, I'm not really sure I've got a clear difference between the two. And I was heartened, because I do remember when Sister Genti, who is one of now the additional administrative heads of Brahma Kumaris, was asked about, the difference between self-worth and self-respect, and self-regard and self-esteem. And and she sort of hedged it. Now, maybe this was quite a long time ago, so maybe she'd say something different now. But when I was thinking about it, I was just writing it down, regard, respect, esteem, worth has come up, dignity. They feel almost like, I don't know if they have it in India, but in England we have something called a colorizer. When you go to the paint shop and trying to pick your colors, and on the greens it'll go from very dark green all the way very, very light shades to very light green. And so on the genre of green, you might get like 10 or 15 colors. They're all green, but they've all got a slightly different shade. And I really do feel, when we're talking about regard and respect, esteem, dignity, worth, that we're really on the what you'd call it, the same wavelength, the same genre, really. And so in my mind, I was thinking, for me anyway, it was more important when I thought about this, not so much like seeing all the differences, but seeing how I can integrate those kind of things into my life. Although I did ask someone, and I like what they said, regard is really how you see someone. I think, when you're doing something like this, you quite often look at a dictionary to see what's, and when you look at regard, I think I looked at one site that has 42 definitions of regard, quite a lot of which have come up, and I thought, oh my goodness. But regard immediately has, connects to this French word, really, to regard, like to see. And so regard for me is really about how you're seeing someone. And respect could be how you actually treat them. So that's, I'm just offering that. I'm not saying it's a definitive definition, but regard how you see someone, and respect how you treat them. And for me, that's important because how you treat someone is a choice in there. There's an internal choice, and I can make those choices if I can practice to overcome my old habits, which basically stop us doing everything. And just sort of going back a little bit. You probably covered this a little bit, but in different cultures, there are a lot of, I don't know what you call protocols. In Hindi, we'd say maryadas. I don't quite know how you translate that, Pooja. Probably a way of doing things, and sometimes we're brought up, that would include manners and being polite and things like that. And there's nothing wrong with those. They're lovely. But someone from a different culture or someone from a different family, maybe even in India, from a different city, they'll have different ways of doing things. Like, I know some of the BK sisters, like in our center, we don't really use chili, but I know some of the BK sisters, they will carry the chili chutney with them because they need the they need the chili, and it's just a cultural thing. It's not. It's a very unimportant thing, except when you are cooking for them and you find out that we haven't got any chili in the center and their meal isn't complete without chili. Now, for myself, I can't quite get my head around chili because I like to taste the vegetables and the chili is just hot. But so it's like, it's a very silly little thing, really, but it just shows, how very, very different, very, very different we can be. And so one of the other things that I was sort of thinking about was that regard can be, to some extent, external. And so, giving regard because of someone's age, and that's perfectly great, because of their position, because of their standing in society, because of their education, etc. And you know, when I was young, we were always brought up to give regard to elders, and you know, when I was a kid, when on the bus, you know, it was absolutely the norm that you would stand up when someone older got up, and particularly if it was a woman, you just get up and give them your seat. Now, I don't travel on public transport very often, but I did recently, and I was surprised that the young people just were sitting there, and there was older people or women standing, and I was thinking, goodness, have they not got, you know, any manners, or do they not see that it would be a nice thing to do? And then I looked across at them, and I realized they were so absorbed, like most people are, on their iPhone or their phone, that they probably didn't even
Yeah,
notice.
yeah. There
They
is, you
didn't
have
even
been
notice.
water how long ago?
Huh?
How long ago?
This is just recent. This is just a few days ago. That we,
Yeah, they will smell.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna walk through all of them.
Okay, someone's muted now. So, you know, so all those kind of protocols can be, to a certain extent, external, and also it could be that I can give regard to someone externally because it's what's expected, but internally, I might not respect them. I mean, I know in some cases we shouldn't need to earn people's respect, but I feel, for myself anyway, I do feel I have to earn people's respect by my behavior, and you know, there's lots of cases, isn't there, where people are given regard for their position, but they're not respected because of maybe their behavior or the way they speak to people, and I think that's really important. I mean, when we're looking, you know, the reason I actually came on the first part of the workshop, yes, I did want to see what the structure was because it helps me, and also to hear what was being said, so I just didn't repeat everything. But I was actually genuinely interested because this quality of regard, I just feel, is so important, because it feels that, like, the energy of regard, and was kind of interchanging it with respect a little bit, aren't we? It feels to me that it's almost higher than a value. It's, I mean, in Brahma Kumaris, it's like, I would say it's an intrinsic virtue of the soul. It's, in fact, what did I write down? It's like, yeah, the soul itself is respectful energy, or you can say the soul is regardful energy. It feels that is what a human being is about. And I think when we're talking, for me anyway, when I'm talking about regard and respect, it's really about getting in touch with something that is so deep, that is so intrinsic, that it really needs to be respected. It really needs to be expressed, but in a very, very natural way. I mean, I was trying to think of some examples, Rob, because a lot of the stuff, you know, you've covered, and then Maureen's covered beautiful things. But I remember when I was training to be a dentist, and we went out onto I think the first year or second year, I can't remember. We went out onto the wards with some of the medical students, and there was a consultant, and he referred to, this is the suspected cardiac failure in bed 6, and this is the acute pulmonary something in bed 4. And I was very, very young, and this was actually, although I was interested in meditation and spirituality, I wasn't, you know, connected with the Brahma Kumaris at that time. This was in the early 70s. And I looked at the lady in the bed, and I thought, gosh, she could be my mother. That could be my mother. And I didn't know anything about all the stuff we're talking about today, but inside there was a very, very strong feeling that came, that I never, ever, ever want to relate to someone or refer to someone like this guy has just done. I mean, he had so much ego of his position, and I thought no, because it didn't actually feel didn't feel right, and it felt very dehumanizing, and it felt very undignified, and all the, you know, I'm just looking at the prompt notes. I mean, basically, they're all the things that I was reflecting on that are connected to respect and regard, are basically the things that you've already talked about. You know, value, intrinsic value. I mean, if you think about human rights, because it's coming up to Human Rights Day on the 10th of December, which, funny enough, is actually the 25th anniversary of Janki Foundation, which has been supporting Global Hospital. And that's how if I'm being honest, I used to give talks and things, but I wasn't aware of things like facilitation until I got exposed to very experienced facilitators in the Janki Foundation. When we talked about values, and that our 25th anniversary happens to be on the Human Rights Day, which is why it's coming in my mind. But, if you look at the Human Rights Charter, the UN Human Rights Charter, particularly Article 1, all human beings are born free, equal in dignity and in rights, which, and they are saying that, which means that each human being is endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. So if you haven't looked at the UN Human Rights Charter, it's worth a look, because basically the UN, and of course the Brahma Kumaris have affiliation to the UN as that non-governmental organization, is basically underpinned by values. Intrinsic human values. And intrinsic to that, as you've mentioned, is that each one of us has an inherent value, its intrinsic value. And it's actually, I think, understanding my own self-value is actually integral to who I am. And that's why, if you, I did look at definitions of regard, and actually, one of them was to recognize the inherent worth of someone or something. And so it's like being able to see the inherent worth and value of someone or something is absolutely critical, in my experience, to being able to practice or cultivate regard and respect, and that kind of brought me on to thinking about, because when you look at regard, it is about my vision. It's very much how I'm seeing someone, how I'm or seeing something, and I really do feel we've got to go beyond the hierarchical outer regard of just giving a regard because of systems. As I said, I think it's very nice. I like those systems of respect and regard and manners and politeness, but we've got to go beyond that so that it's coming really very deep from within, so that I can really train myself to see the speciality in another person, their qualities. And for that, I've really got to train my vision. Just one example, going back to when I was working, because I was practicing meditation and involved in a little bit of training and spiritual training and positive thinking, I ended up running some sessions in the health trust where I was, and because of that, I ended up being a staff representative on the development board. So we'd sit around the table, there'll be the chief executive and head of training and quite high, quite high up people. And there was little old me as a clinician, just basically a common garden dentist, around the table. And I used to enjoy that. But one thing really struck me in regard to this giving regard for position and how it can be sometimes quite difficult. There was one woman, a young woman, and she was by day being trained up to be one of the top managers. So I don't quite know in years, so she was going to be very high up in the health trust. By night, because she was a single parent, she was working as a cleaner. So by night, she was the cleaner in one of the clinics of the health trust. Can you imagine? And by day, she was being trained up to be a top manager. Now, put yourself in the position of, say, a clinician. Some of the my colleagues that I worked with, not all of them, but some of them didn't have a lot of respect for the cleaners because it was a very manual job. And like you mentioned, I think it was Manoli mentioned earlier, I used to think, gosh, but if I came into the surgery every morning and all the gubbins and all the bloody things and all the in the bins haven't been cleaned and hadn't been emptied out and everything wasn't all wiped down and sterilized, I mean, I wouldn't be able to work properly. So in my mind, a cleaner has an absolutely integral part of the team. In fact, I can remember one of who was the head of cleaning, and she was like a top manager. She comes in and she looked around and she said, "Mr. Goodman, when was the last time this floor has been polished? It doesn't look up to standard to me." And I thought, my goodness, there's a cleaning person who's got as much values for cleanliness as we talk about, because that's another definition of a value, giving value. But for me, I give value to something that I consider to be important, and for her, obviously, that was important. So I was thinking, gosh, what vision would someone look at her? She's going to become a top manager, and someone looking at it in the clinic would say, "Oh, it's the cleaner." And I must admit, I thought, wow, yes, you could get tripped up over that. And so, that does bring us back to this idea of having an equality of vision, which I think is like a respectful vision, which is beyond the roles. So that's, yeah, okay, so that's one point I'd like to make. The other point, Maureen did mention it, and you referred to it, Manoj, the absolute importance of giving unconditional positive regard. And I've got some friends who work with young people who are basically excluded from or pretty much outside the norms of society. I don't know how it translates, and I hope I'm not speaking, my speed is okay for the translators. But there's a term in England called NEETs, and it's a sort of an acronym, it's a shorthand. So NEET is usually young people, so they're not in education, so they're not at school or university. They're not in employment, so they're not working, and they're not in the T, they're not in training. So they're not doing anything in society, they're not working, they're not being educated, they're not training for anything, and generally quite often they're excluded. And in England, there's a term called feral. I mean, that probably doesn't translate. Feral, it's almost like a wild animal, where there's absolutely no boundaries, and some of these young people literally just do whatever they want, and they have absolutely no boundaries. Now, it seems, you know, that pretty much one of the only things that gives the possibility of these young people changing is when they're given what is called unconditional positive regard. And you know, you've probably heard that the term. It was well, it was, I think it was made famous by Carl Rogers, the psychologist, and that giving unconditional positive regard, it involves showing complete support and acceptance of a person, someone. So you're showing complete support and acceptance of a person, no matter what they say or what they are doing or what they have done. So you're not evaluating them, you're not judging them, you're not condemning them. And that has to be done. I can't remember the time period, but it has to be done over months, maybe even years. And when they feel this just unconditional, so it's like it's a regard which is totally accepting them, and there's no judgment in there, then slowly some of those young people actually change. And because one of the things I was thinking about in terms of regard and respect, it's an energy, isn't it? You know, I mean, in any relationship, it's like, you know, people, I'm told, I've never worked in a call center, but we have people, we have someone here at the center who used to, and you pick up the good morning, and the person's thinking, oh gosh, not another customer, not another person to chew off my head. So they're saying good morning, and actually inside they're not feeling that. And so, I mean, I don't know about people at work always used to know when I answered the phone. And even here at the meditation center, people are, we know it's you, David, because you always pause for a second before you speak. Because you don't know what's on the end of that telephone. And obviously, I used to have emergencies, nothing like, you know, you would have known, Dr. Mehta, with big operations, but you don't know what's going to come. And it was always like a little preparation just to be present before you actually speak. And I do feel in terms of cultivating regard and cultivating respect, because I was thinking about how to actually do that, is actually one of the skills, and it's already been mentioned, you know, that there's clearly a link between my ability to give regard and respect to others and my ability to give it to myself. And as I said, it's all to do with how I see myself. What vision am I seeing myself? And I do think this whole thing of vision is so important. And it's also, in my mind, oh no, you probably can't see that. I'm probably back to front anyway. I'm very low tech with this because I'll get myself mixed up if I try and start showing slides. Anyway, but there was something that we discussed in one of our health workshops, that there's a very close connection. If you can imagine a triangle, with, you know, and at the apex you've got value, and then on one corner you've got respect or regard, and on the other you've got care. So you've got value, respect, and care. And it feels that when I'm trying to cultivate respect and then also care for people, look after people, I've got to first understand the value, when I understand the value of something, then I respect it, have regard for it. And when I understand its value and I respect and regard it, then I will naturally look after it. So I'll care for it. Yeah. Would you agree? You can't, well, I'm hoping you agree. Or you can think about it. And so in terms of myself, I've got to learn how to value myself. I've got to learn how to respect and give regard to myself. And then I've got to learn how to care for myself. And, you know, for me, that was my whole entree into values, basically with the Janki Foundation, because the whole ethos of the Janki Foundation was basically to support the well-being of health practitioners and patients, basically to care. And so those three, in my mind, are very closely connected: value, respect, care. And if you can imagine, at the middle of the triangle is appreciate, which again, you know, we've mentioned before, and I'm not going to apologize for repeating it, because actually I think it's absolutely critical. In Leeds, we have a beautiful Cistercian abbey, which is now an old ruins. And we do meditative walks around the abbey, and we have 4 banners up, and we have silent walks and have conversations about the different qualities, kindness, strength. But one of them is appreciative. And the banner on appreciative is, I focus on goodness. I focus on goodness. And for me, when I'm looking at the relationship between value, respect, and care, it's appreciate is the one that's in the middle. And it means I focus on goodness. And, you know, that's why I was saying before that, you know, regard can be an external thing, but respect is something internal, and it's a choice. And I do like this idea of making a choice about what I focus on. And so I'll just very little what I focus on, as a choice, but also it's, as I said, it's about my vision. So I'm going to get my little prompt card now, because I made some notes. Vision seems absolutely important, and it does feel, you know, it connects to this idea of regard, doesn't it? Because it's about looking at, it's about how I see things, it's about how what perspective I have on things. And that's also connected to my attitude, because I understand attitude as my mental positioning to something. So it felt to me, when we're talking about learning to appreciate and focusing down on goodness, that it's really about vision. And I do like the example that comes up in a lot of the, you know, the spiritual teachings of the archer, you know, who's I think, get the story mixed up, but I think in the Gita, wasn't it, when he was asked, Arjuna was asked, what can you see? And, you know, all he could see, was it the eye of the bird or the eye of the fish? I can't quite remember, but basically, if it was in the tree, he wasn't seeing the sky or the tree or bird. He was actually looking at right at the center of the eye. And this idea of really focusing down. And so this idea of really focusing down on goodness. I focus on goodness. I choose to see goodness. And you know, it's been mentioned before, but here we are. The 3 months. Well, actually, this is 3 koala bears. Actually, it's in India. It would be 3 monkeys. What is it? see no evil, hear no evil, and speak no evil. And that's very much connected to what we're talking about, isn't it? And I was thinking on a deeper level, because obviously what we speak depends on our thinking. We'd have to go inside and think, to think no evil, to feel no evil, and also on a deeper level, to intent no evil, not to have any intention. Because all of those things, as we know, create a vibration and an energy which creates an atmosphere. And that's why if I say to someone that comes through the door and I think, oh gosh, not them, I'm sure you would have some of those patients where your heart would sink. and you say, oh, really nice to see you, Mr. Jones. But inside you're thinking, oh gosh, no. Then even though you're saying the words, the vibration that will reach them, it won't match. There won't be congruence between what I'm saying and what I'm feeling and deep inside. And that's why, one of the things when you said, regard for someone, that they were consistent, and they were inside and outside is the same. So that's just one comment. We do use this expression in the Brahma Kumaris, and it may not be, just us, but, to see but not to see. Because if someone's in front of you getting angry, or if someone is displaying disrespect to someone, you can't physically not see it because it's right in front of you. And I did ask one of our very senior teachers once, she said, don't see it. I said, if someone's getting angry right in front of you, how can you say don't see it? And then she said, okay, David, what I mean by that is after they've got angry at you, your vision for them shouldn't change. And I thought, wow, whew. How do you do that? That's quite a high thing to do, isn't it? And I've heard, I don't know if it's true, but I heard Dadi Prakash Mani, who was one of the heads of Brahma Kumaris for many years, absolutely wonderful person. I heard that she had this see the best and forget the rest, which is very much connected to what I just mentioned. So somehow to train my vision to only see goodness, and if I see anything else, I choose to forget it. Which in my understanding is not to be influenced by them, influenced by that situation, so that I'm not carrying that forward. And that I did hear this expression, I can't remember where I heard it, but the greatest virtue is to see virtue. So the greatest virtue to see virtue, and the greatest defect or the greatest weakness is to see weakness and defect in others. And we have this expression, don't we? Even if someone's got 99 defects, they must have some good quality, and my job is actually to see that. And I feel probably that's one of the most important practices, like for myself, to train myself to do that. So I'm just looking at the time really. Yeah, I think just, and the other thing, because I was thinking, how do I do that? The whole thing of being mindful and being in the moment and being present seems to be very important, because I've been monitoring myself this last week or so, knowing that I was going to be talking about regard. And so I was actually looking at how respectful and how regardful I was to the people around me here. And normally I think I am quite respectful, but then I noticed that when you start looking, you can see that there's little ways of speaking. I'm quite, well, people who know me, I'm quite lighthearted and quite jokey and quite a conversationalist. But I noticed that this last week, I was thinking just to make a quick joke or quip sometimes isn't necessarily respectful. And I noticed that as I started going beyond this, going a little bit deeper, thought, no, I won't say that, because it's, you know, making a joke about what someone's cooked or this or that or the other it's not nice. It can hurt. And the other thing I just want to throw in, now it's going to kind of finish though, because maybe some questions or comments. You know, the first person that receives the respect or the regard is us, because, you know, we know what goes out comes back. So if I'm looking at someone in a disrespectful way and having those thoughts, what I've noticed, they come back to me and I don't feel good. So I'm the first one. I'm the first one that's affected. And not feeling good obviously is not an aspect of self-care. Right, I'm going to stop there because I'm conscious of the time. Yeah, I'm just looking at the notes. I think I've kind of mentioned most of what I was wanting to share. But just one thing, I did find a quote from the Prince's Trust, which is, of course, now Prince Charles, is now King Charles, you know, set up the trust to help young people. And going back to these young people who are a bit alienated, you know, they wanted a system that engaged them rather than just told them what to do. And it was one of the quotes from the young people, no one asked me why I did something. The courts are always too busy to ask. And for me, just listening to me can mean the world. People like me are told what to do, but they're not asked. So, yeah, I mean, in my time as a dentist, where I was working in Bradford, it was very, very working class, down to earth and multicultural. And so in my work, I came across a whole different strata of people. And I did try and have a vision of equality, which I couldn't really do until I came across the ideas of the Brahma Kumaris, but I felt everyone had to be treated equal, but I couldn't quite understand how to do it. Right, I'm going to stop there. I hope something has been of use.
Okay, so thank you so much, Brother David. A question, there are two questions which I would want to ask. One is mentioned in the chat box that I am a very flamboyant personality. And the moment I go into a gathering, it seems I always steal the show. So it's not in my hands because I'm flamboyant, that's what they're saying. But then how do I make sure that I don't steal the show and give equal recognition and regard to the people around in the gathering?
Probably by being a little bit less flamboyant. It's not, in my experience, it's not good to suppress our natural nature. Like for myself, I'm originally from Liverpool, which you know, the Beatles and fame and we're known for talking. So I'm I've always been a conversationalist since I was quite young, and also being a children's dentist, you know, when you're working with young children, you can't just stay quiet. So it used to be a bit of a joke, really. I was supposed to be a meditator and a yogi and stay peaceful and quiet, but I'd have to spend 8 hours of my day literally constantly talking because young children are nervous when they come in. And so, and people, you know, and so what happened, that carried on into meetings. And so, you know, even meetings, because I'm help on the management committee and with our seniors, that I have the habit of talking. And I realized that it wasn't useful at that point because I needed to listen. And what I noticed that if I talked too much or interrupted too much, people didn't actually listen to what I was saying because they thought, oh, David's going to go on a bit. And so I had to train myself, and I am in the process of training myself to listen more. It's interesting that the letters of listen in English also, if you change them round, become silent. But silent doesn't mean that you don't say anything, but in my case, it means let everyone finish. And then if someone else doesn't make the point that I want to make, then I can make that point. And I think Maureen mentioned this whole thing of no, not appreciative inquiry, nonviolent communication, where you're sharing how you're feeling. So previously, if there was a decision made, I would just be very forthright and say, I think this is a ridiculous decision, blah, 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 blah. And no one would listen because I was dominating. Afterwards, I would say, well, I changed my approach. And I said, when I heard that this decision was made, I felt a little bit disappointed and a little bit frustrated and a little bit irritated. So I changed how I responded. And that process is still in process, but I mean, I can equate with what Paul's asking. I don't want to say I'm flamboyant, but I'm because of my way of interacting and speaking with people, you can step into other people's spaces too much. And so for me, I've had to learn to sort of dial down my communication to make sure that I'm actually hearing someone. So if they speak, I don't take the conversation from them. And I'm training myself to do that, ask them, their interest and to share more rather than just listen for me to take over the conversation. Now, I'm not sure if that relates directly to what the question is with the flamboyance, but I think once the very fact that you're aware that you're flamboyant and it can be a little bit detrimental, that's the first thing. And then I guess you just find a way just to maybe dial it down a little bit so that you're not stepping into other people's spaces. Like with the listening thing, we used to have meetings, and some of with the the men in the room, they were doing all the talking, and I knew that some of the women or the sisters definitely had things to say, and I asked them, why you're not speaking? And she said, because you guys are thinking and speaking too fast for me. Because I realized that I think very quickly. So, someone's saying something, you kind of get it after they've spoken a little bit, and then you say, okay, that's fine. And of course, now I'm learning not to do that because it's very disrespectful to cut someone off, even though you've got what they're saying. Now I'm having to learn to let them finish. So I've had to develop patience, a little bit of humility, learning to listen and kind of dial down, and so that's what I would suggest. And I'm sure whoever's given that comment can find some way of just dialing down a little bit, but not losing your naturalness.
Right. So yes, so it's having a balance between your flamboyance and naturalness. Great. Okay, and actually we don't have time, but I think you can just give a brief answer for this. We are shooting over time. That how do I develop regard for God, for the Supreme Being, or how do I increase my regard?
Oh my God, what a question. I mean, on a personal level, before I came across the Brahma Kumaris, I think I must have had thousands of spiritual books, and they were all good, but there was always something that was wasn't quite the complete picture. And for me anyway, it might be different for different people. I found when I came across the teachings in the Brahma Kumaris, they were very complete, and that for me was very important. And daily we listen to lessons which we understand are from the divine, and as I understand those more deeply, my regard and respect for that one above grows and grows, because I thought, wow, this is such beautiful, insightful, clear spiritual information that's very useful to me. And that one's vision for me has never changed. Like, we've all been very material conscious, and Brahma Kumaris would say body conscious, and so we've been up to all sorts of things that have not been useful to us or others. That being doesn't seem to see all that. He seems to look past that and look right into the center of the bullseye, like the archer, and goes right into our original and eternal qualities, and that's great. So I'd like to learn that more.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And now I would request Dr. Mehta to propose the vote of thanks. Over to you, Dr. Mehta. Yeah.
Om Shanti. David,
Hello, lovely to see you. I was surprised to see you.
I just love to listen to you. Just enjoyed listening. Whatever you say, it's so interesting. David has always been a great conversationalist, and I think he has the greatest regard for everyone. Make them happy, make them laugh. I think that's the way to give the regard. Make everyone happy around. I've known David for, I don't know how many, 30 years. David, it's been, he said very beautifully that he was a pediatric dental surgeon, and therefore he had to keep on talking to people as a regard towards making them happy. I think I've enjoyed listening to David irrespective, and I think that's the greatest regard I can pay to him. And I think focusing, he talked about, is something very interesting. Keep on focusing, keep on focusing. Absolutely, like Arjun, he was talking about the showing a bow and arrow kind of action. I think that is something very interesting. Regards for everyone, and regards for God, and regards for the self itself. Thank you, David. I think we enjoyed your talk, and every time I meet you, I only want to listen. I don't want to talk. Thank you. Yes.
Very sweet. Asha, can I have a close doctor and patient relationship as well? Because he did my cancer operation 20 years ago, and I'm still here, so I have a lot of respect for him as well.
So thank you so much, both of you. And I would request Sister Claudia, she has a few announcements as well, special announcements from her side. And yeah.
Om Shanti, David. It was very
Hello.
nice to listen to you. And
Yeah,
actually,
nice
we have things in common. I'm a dentist too, like you. And I know when the patient comes, they are very scared. Dentists, for them, is like little devils, So we need to talk a little bit with them so they can calm down. And another thing also, I had work with this poor kids, and they actually, when we give them care and respect, they grow in life. And they come out from that poverty, and they becomes actually, some became businessmen, some became very good, practicing very good, nice things. So yeah, I have that experience as you do. So it was very good to to listen from you, your experience. So another thing I like to talk is because we are reaching the 50th anniversary, 50th episode of the Values for Life. So I thought about it to give back to the Global Hospital some contributions for some project they have there. So we are making for the golden episode, so 50 episode that we are having. So anyone who wants to contribute for Global Hospital, we have here the link that you can put pointoflife.info. Let me see, I cannot read. .donation. And this is for the whole, you can go America, and I don't know about India. India, maybe we need to contact Dr. Pratap, or maybe Dr. Ashok Mehta can give, or Dr. Manoj can give the link how they can contribute, because we like to have, when you contribute, please put Golden Values for Life, Golden Episode, so they know that is from this gift that's coming from this, from our Values for Life. Thank you very much for everyone, and thank you very much to you, brother. It was very nice to hear from you.
So, yeah. So thank you so much, Sister Claudia. And I'll just take quickly the announcements and before we go into the meditation with Brother David. So yeah, as Claudia's sister already announced that we are on the 49th episode right now. And as we move further, the next episode is 50th. We are very fortunate to have our very senior Mohini Didi all the way from New York. And Brother Eric would be having a little bit of spiritual chit chat with her she'll be there with us for 1 hour. So the first half hour she'll give a talk, and the next half hour will be a nice chit chat, and it will be on surrender, the value of surrender. And this is the Golden Jubilee episode, and whereby we are thinking we would want to give Mohini Didi this special gift, as Claudia's sister already said, that donation towards the Global Hospital. So I think we would request Dr. Mehta later, not today, we don't have time, to tell us the account number or something to find out how to send in India the funds if someone wants to donate to Global Hospital. As always, the workshop following the talk would be on 22nd October, and we'll be having another new sister with us, Sister Pratibha Daya from South Africa. And after that, all of you know, October is a special month for us. We have the World Values Day, usually on 21st October happening. I think it's the third Thursday of every October. And we celebrate it because we started this Values for Life series from that day itself. So we have our second birthday approaching, and then we have our very seniors again, Brother Charlie and Asha Didi from ORC Delhi, who would be chit-chatting in conversation with Brother Eric, as always again. So please, all of you are welcome to join this event, not to miss once in a lifetime event. And this is our elegant calendar prepared by Kosha Behin. And I think we send you the emails as well. You'll be receiving them soon. So I'll stop sharing the screen now. And before I forget, yeah, these are our emails, and the Values for Life series at gmail.com. We have started sending emails to y'all from this. So make sure it's not from Vihasa India anymore. And that's also Vancouver email at ca.brahmakumaris.org. That's our website. And we'll also send you the link to these playlists for the workshops and the episodes which we do in the emails and the WhatsApp numbers. Okay, so with this, I'll just stop sharing, and I would request Brother David to take us in the meditation mode on how to develop regard for self. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've listened to a huge amount of information and beautiful points through the whole 2 hours. So I just request you to really bring yourself right into the present moment. So whatever has gone before and whatever we've all got to do afterwards, just put that to one side. Come into the present moment. If there's any distractions around you, just let them be there. But we can choose not to give them our attention. I'd like us to just reflect really on this quality of appreciative, focusing on goodness. Just reflect. There is a choice to see what is good or bad, what is damaged or faulty in anyone. Or I have the choice to appreciate what is good, benevolent, beautiful, life-affirming. So let me just reflect and maybe make that choice that from now I will choose to focus on goodness more and more. Maybe reflect on what happens when I focus on goodness and when I appreciate. Now just focus on the self as the inner being, the spiritual being, the soul. And see if you can pick out one or two qualities or virtues that are strong in you. And appreciate yourself for that. Now let's take our thoughts beyond a little bit, up to that spiritual sun up above, the divine, the supreme. And maybe just for a few moments reflect on what it is that that one sees and appreciates in me. And as I do that, I can feel the power of that spiritual sun flowing into myself and energizing myself so that I have the strength to put into practice the things that I've been reflecting on. And so I just stay for a couple of moments in my natural state of peace and my natural state of self-regard and self-respect. Thank you.
Thank you once again, Brother David, and for your sharings and for the meditation as well. And Anu sister, any other things you have to carry on with, or that's it? Right.
Can we take a picture? And thank you so much, David brother, for this invaluable sharing.
Thank you.
We usually take a picture with our guest speaker, so we don't want to miss it.
Okay. Okay. So what do I do? Just smile?
Yes, smile more. So everyone can open their video.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
People
that's
don't
good.
open, but they open for the photo because we want to keep this as our memory. Yeah, I got it. And thank you very much for very, very practical. Thank you.
Thank you so much once again.
Okay. Carry on the good work, everyone. You're doing a fantastic job.